This year's European elections will take place from 6th to 9th of June. Some 350 million Europeans will decide the future of the bloc. So what do we know 2 weeks before the vote, and how will the future European Parliament look like? To discuss the issue, we're joined now by Marcin Zaborowski, political scientist from GLOBSEC. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, what will the new Euro Parliament look like? Who will rule Europe?
Well, it doesn't really seem that there will be a larger change. According to the recent opinion polls, the current system in which you have a grand coalition, meaning the center-right European People's Party, together with the Socialists and Democrats, so being center-left with center-right, will remain in power with the support of the Liberals from the Renew Europe. I mean, between these three parties, they are likely to retain a majority consisting of around 405 or 410 seats in the parliament of 720. These are obviously just opinion polls, and the final result could be very different. Not very different, but it could be. But it doesn't seem very likely that that rule of the grand coalition will cease to play the role in the parliament after the election. So right. In reality, not a huge change.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's according to polls, as you indicated, but it's not that the status quo will be maintained everywhere. Therefore, I'd like to know which groupings are to lose the most and which are to gain the most.
Well, the groups which are likely to gain are the far-right groupings, and that actually are 4 of them. And that's the issue, that the far right in the European Parliament is quite disunited and doesn't always work together. But the 2 largest groupings, number 1 is Identity and Democracy, and that's a group where we have the French Rassemblement National, so the former National Front in France, plus the Dutch Wim Wilders group and the Salvini's party Lega from Italy, kind of openly Eurosceptic parties. These were likely to get around 80 to 90 MEPs, but recently they've been weakened because they decided to expel the Alternative for Germany from this grouping, which even for that grouping, Alternative for Germany became too right for the far right. So that's going to be probably the strongest center, well, not center right, but the far right grouping. And another one is the grouping of the European Conservatives and Reformists. This is the one to which the Polish Law and Justice belongs. The party which was in government in Poland for the last 8 years. It's not anti-European, but it's Eurosceptic, as we all know. And they are in this group together with the Spanish Vox and also with the Italian party of the Italian brothers of the sitting Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. So these are the 2 groupings which are likely to actually get more votes in the incoming elections.
Right, you mentioned France. I'm wondering whether France is the only country in Europe where the Eurosceptics or hardliners, far-right hardliners are to win this election, because yes, Rassemblement National leads the polls with the decisive majority. Why is it so? Is it because the French are so fed up with Emmanuel Macron? They want some change. They want to show the current government a yellow card, something like that?
Well, European elections, they have a certain dynamic, and the dynamic is that it's very often a protest vote against the sitting government, and people kind of think that they are showing a yellow card, as you just said yourself, without many consequences, because people don't really believe that the European Parliament yields a lot of power. They are mistaken in that, because European Parliament does actually elect European Commission. It has leading role in approving the legislation and regulation which affects our life. But still, the perception is that doesn't really matter. I can just show to the government that I don't like it, but I wouldn't have to bear the consequences of that. So you're right that people who don't like Emmanuel Macron, they are very much inclined to just vote for the far right, and the far right will win not only in France but in a number of other countries. For example, in Italy, in Austria, in the Netherlands, possibly in Belgium too, where the Flemish nationalists are likely to win. And we also have the case of Romania and Portugal. In both countries, the far right will become more powerful, will gain in support.
Right. Why do we observe this pan-European pattern that the far right is gaining popularity?
Well, we basically been living through the surge in populist vote for the last, I believe, almost 15 years, really, since the global economic crisis in 2008. Then the migration crisis in 2015, we've seen parties which formerly were a niche far-right parties to gain support, and in some countries even coming to power. So I think we are in this particular moment in history when the parties of establishments of center-right, center-left are becoming less popular. And protest vote is gaining in support, and it's in part is resistance to globalization. It's certainly resistance to migration. That's a big thing here, and very often it's just a way of disapproving with the sitting government.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about migration. I guess that's one of the hot topics of this year's election campaign to the European Parliament. But I guess people not everywhere in Europe are concerned about the very same thing. And I took a look at some studies, and it seems that in Poland and Baltic states, people are mostly concerned about the conflict across our eastern border, right? That's the war in Europe and a potential conflict with Russia. But we have the hottest topic in Germany and Italy is the cost of living. Then we have environmental issues in Spain, if I'm not mistaken, Portugal, Ireland as well, Scandinavia. That's what usually happens in Scandinavia. And we have the issue of pensions in France, Romania, Poland as well. So given all the scope of issues that are concerning Europeans, how will the proceedings of the future European Parliament look like? Because it seems that that many MEPs from particular countries will have a different agenda than just their party, their grouping as a whole.
Well, yes, I mean, even in the current parliament, we have a situation in which, for example, the Polish members of European Parliament from the governing civic platform were not voting with the European People's Party on the Migration Pact. So we have a situation in which all the center-right parties voted in favor of the Migration Pact, and the Polish members of European Parliament didn't. Only with the exception of some people from the left, and even those later on withdrew their support for the Migration Pact. So European Parliament sometimes tends to vote along the ideological divisions, and then these multinational party groupings are important. But sometimes when it's issue vital to national agenda, this is where the voting goes along the national lines. We've seen it in the past, and I'm pretty sure we will see it in the future. But it can work both ways. Because, for example, Ursula von der Leyen, the current president of the European Commission, says that she's open to work with Giorgia Meloni's party, who is in the Eurosceptic grouping of European conservatives and reformists, and the party which is likely to surge. So they will be fishing for support there. And at the same time, some members of European People's Party will sometimes don't support the progressive agenda. It may also happen, as it did in the past.
Right, it will be interesting to see the shaping of the new European Commission, because it's the European Parliament that partially decides about it. Right, Marcin Zaborowski, political scientist from GLOBSEC, was our guest tonight. Thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you.